Ko tau mai nei I tēnei ata. I rungi I tēnā ngā mihi kia koe te whai e mere, nau e hono mai ki tēnei wahanga, ki tēnei kaupapa e pāna ki ngā mokopuna, ngā tamariki mokopuna o te kohanga reo. E kia nei, hoki I tēnei kaupapa ara ko te hononga I te kura mai te kohanga reo tai atu. Mō ngā rā e heke mai ana. Nō reira, nei rā te mihi ki a koe, I whai wā ki te whakawhitiwhiti kōrero, whiriwhiri kōrero, a whakaaro hoki a tōna wā, ka puawai ngā kōrero ko kōrero hia me ngā whakaaro kua puta. Nō reira, anō hoki e te hoa. Mōrena.
Mōrena.
Tēnā kōrua.
Ka pai, kia ora. So maybe
Well-
we could just start firstly with introductions.
Okay,
Yeah, we'll
I'll
give
start.
it to you. Kia ora.
Morena kōrua, ko Miri Austin ahau. Ngō Ngāti Kahu, te Rāroa, te Apauri, toku iwi. Ko te rangi nui toku marae, ko Waikotikoti te awa, ko Tukurau te moana, ko Matarahurahu te hapu, ko Ngāti Kahu te iwi. Ko tuku pāpā, ana atarita machu ngō Pāwaringa, ko Mōruhu tuku marae, ko Tukurau tuku awa o moana, ko Mātuku te whārua tuku waka, ko Te Rarawa te Apauri tuku iwi. Te uri o tai tuku hapu. Mōrena koutou.
Kia ora.
Mōrena. Oh,
Wow.
mōrena. No, haere tore.
So thank you for joining us again to share information specifically about this amazing kaupapa. It's actually been a huge kaupapa for us to explore something different and new. And during this whole process, we've been finding out there's so many gaps and areas that we need to explore further in terms of that transitioning, what it looks like, and how are we in the future going to support our kohanga, especially the kohanga, and whether it's from a ministry perspective, a district office, a national perspective from kohanga, our community, our purapura, and the individuals within the kohanga reo. So thank you again. We're just going back to that question. What are some of the barriers and complexities? What is, that whānau possibly may not have experienced or may experience during that transitioning process?
Tēnā kōrua. I was just quietly thinking about the kaupapa that you're on, and a thought came to mind where it's quite a beautiful kaupapa, because, when we think about our pepes and kohanga, it's the starting point of a future for our future generations, and it's the wholeness. It's the wholeness of our pepes, grown into puberty, grown into grown adults, and it's from that kākano within kohanga where we start. And, you're looking at a holistic view of making that individual, that pepe, an invincible, enlightened individual. So, when you think in that light, it's quite a deep and spiritual journey that you guys are on. And, it's unfortunate that we have to deal with society, the world that we do live in, or the communities we live in, and the homes that we're having to deal with, whānau. That, within that development, there's so many hiccups, I'll call them hiccups. And, but when you look at the broader picture of what you can, what your objective is, it's quite enlightening. During my journey with ngā oho ake and also, 35 years I've spent within kohanga or puo, life flashes by and you see the different whānau that you have communicated with, you've spent time with, you've enjoyed, happy moments with them as well. And during that, and I suppose because I've been in the community of Pamuir to Glen Innes for 40 odd years now, I've got to know the community. And that has a huge influence, and no matter where our mokopuna are. I'll give you an example. I've made when I'm born and bred in West Auckland, first of all, in Chatterton North, and we call it TAT at the time. And, we had a huge Māori community. And, we as young people had beautiful mentors, queers, kaumātuas that were always there with us, with our parents beside us as well. And I'm talking about people like Whaiju Mārio, Letty Brown, Twini Hakaraia, Nanny Mavis and Uncle George, and, those Peter Sharples, Pat Ohipa, they all lived in our community where I was born and bred. And those people had a huge influence in the Māori community, and a huge influence in the sense it was positive. If we all went off track, they were always there to midi us and bring us back on track. And, when I went through Rutherford High School at college, at those times, we couldn't even sing a Māori waiata. It was, forbidden. So people like Dr. Peter Sharples and Aroha, they started manutaki. So we had that culture influence I think I started manutaki when I was at intermediate. So, that's where they brought in the flavour, the identity with us young ones, and peke ake and miri us through those difficult times, those teenage years. But the reason why I'm bringing that history, sharing my history, is that it's the community that has a huge influence with whānau, with a direction of where your children are going to go. And that still continues. With Ngā Oho Ake, when I made contact with the West Auckland kohanga reo, there was absolutely no second thought. All their mokopuna were going to Kura. And they spoke very highly and respectfully of Waipareira Trust. They had systems within that community, West Auckland, that they knew they could go and get support no matter what. And Waipareira seems to be the key institution that helps them no matter what the kaupapa is. They spoke very highly of Hoani Waitiri Marae, where they have a lot of events there where they all converge. And of course that brings out that whole whakawhanaungatanga. And they talk, strongly how I spoke about their kaumātua there as well. And it seems as though, the structures that I experienced when I was a teenager, that structure is still there and it's still influencing young whānau over there, how in the direction where they think their mokopuna should go. They're very proud of being Māori. This is the whānau I spoke to, very proud of being Māori. Absolutely, their children are going through kura, university. They're talking about to their children about university is just a common thing to do. And the appearance, some whānau didn't have he iti te reo. Now they're studying te reo. And she said, one of the mamas said to me, it's how can I, encourage my children to speak te reo when I can't do it? So that motivated her. And most of the young whānau I spoke to in West Auckland have the same sort of attitude. They want the best for their children. They talk about their own background and experiences through Hoani Waitiri Marae seems to be, and Kotoku. They talked about colleges like Rutherford High School, and they talked about Whāju Māori, you had an influence there as well. So that history within each community has a huge influence in how they're thinking, and it continues even now. So that was really interesting, I thought, when I was speaking to the West Auckland Kohanga Reo. East side, where Opua is, I don't think the history, well, wait a minute, I just got to be careful here, because I wasn't born and bred in East Auckland, but I've brought my family up in Panmure for 40 odd years. And I've heard, back in the 60s, 70s, it was a very strong Māori community as well. They had a very, I think there was about 80% Māori population in East Auckland. And but through the dissemination of change and whole housing issues, now there's about 30% or 25% Māori population in the East Side community. We have several, the strongest marae that I know most of our kohanga participate in is Rua Pōtaka marae. George is very pro-Māori, very supportive of what we can, how we can evolve Māoridom, caters for all sorts of issues. I think she's got 18 staff there now working. So, that has an influence within the East Side community as well. Of course, we've got mana tangata there, Ngāti Whātua. And I'll be quite honest, I've found that they do take care of their iwi first, or their hapu first. Those that haven't got the connection or affiliation with Ngāti Whātua, we don't hear much about them. The reason why most kohanga reo don't go or use the marae and orake, it's too expensive. But yeah, so we in East Auckland have more contact with Rua Pōtaka. The kohanga reo within the eastern suburbs, all of them, it's a real mixed bag. Most of our mokopuna go to our kura, kura kaupapa Māori or puo, which is basically like a 5-minute walk from our kohanga. And it's a mixed bag. What I mean by that is that it's convenience for its location for parents, it's just one drop off, one pickup. Unfortunately, I've found that a lot of our mokopuna that go to puo, they stay there until intermediate. I'm not too sure. In my time, it was called intermediate. Not too sure what it's called now. And then they go to Hoani Waititi or Waioria or Kahurangi, because they have a wider options for their rangatahi. So we have got a wharekura, but most whānau feel that there's not enough options where their rangatahi want to go in their profession. Otherwise, most of them go to bilingual units. Our tauiwi friends of getting onto it now. They want the numbers of our mokopuna that go to kohanga. So they've established nearly every intermediate college now have got bilingual units. And that's across the board in Tamaki Makaurau. So that's where they're going. And also, like I found out some of the Catholic schools, they have full immersion. They have full immersion in some of our Catholic schools. Sacred Heart, Barradine, and St. Patrick's. This is East Auckland here. And they've catered for that need, because when I was speaking to the Māori teacher at Barradine, she said, wow, look at all the professions, and you just need to look at the exposure of Māori media. So they think that the school, the BOT, feel that there's definitely a future. So that's why they have 4 immersions, classrooms now. South Auckland, I'm halfway through that list. It's the biggest area, South Auckland, with our kohanga. Some have I've found, and I don't know why, but that's in South Auckland, there seems to be more social issues within the home. It's some of them. I kind of laugh actually because some of the young, and they're young. I can tell just by I've done a lot of phone work. I've gone to a few whānau hui, and I've gone to a few purapura hui. But there's the young mums, and I'm talking as young as, I think the youngest one I've met is 18 years old. And her, they just wanted to meet me to know more about the kaupapa, even though their children weren't ready. They weren't of that age, going from 4 to 5. But they taught me a hell of a lot, actually. They kind of exposed a lot of situations that, I'm certainly not streetwise, but they just told me where it's at. Very blunt, straight to the point. They just said, one mum said to me, I don't want to know all about that. How can you help me? This is what I need, And her baby was only 3, and her youngest one was, I think, 18 months. And I said, well, tell me, what do you need? So I wrote everything down for this young mum. And she needed, it was like moving into a new home. She had no kai. She had bills galore. She had really low self-esteem about generally everything. She came to kohanga reo because it gave her time out. She said it was a great babysitting service. But you know what I liked about this young mum? She was damn honest and open, And she said, and I said, yeah, I can accept that. Some mums do need time out. And if our babies are safe and learning te reo minga tikanga, getting kai, they're warm, go for it, Because the reality, the ideal situation is not out there. Well, I haven't come across the ideal whānau, put it that way. But, kohanga caters for a variety of situations. But the whole transition thing in South Auckland, I found, was some were a given. Most of them were going to bilingual units. And one of the main reasons was that the Kura and Manuriwa, Finlayland Street 1, they were all full. There's huge waiting lists, apparently.
Yes.
So that was a hiccup. And so for them not to wait, they didn't want to wait around, they went straight into bilingual units. Social, but, a lot of stuff was around, I haven't thought about it. Some of the whānau had children or babies that were 4 or 5, still thinking about it. Oh, we don't know. It depends on a number of situations where they've still got a job. And I said, yeah, but you can still send them to school. It costs nothing. And if it does, let us know, because we can help in all areas. They wanted, the key thing was poverty. It's still out there. And I think kohanga is definitely a nest in all areas, not just for our reo winga tikanga. It's a home. It's a home where they have no responsibilities, in a sense. They say they can just come to kohanga, drop their babies off, and know that their baby's going to be taken care of.
Yeah.
The whole transitional thing is, most of them are going to bilingual units, and that's simply because the kuras had a waiting list. We help. They've given me list of the uniforms for their babies, shoes, any fees. If there are fees, we pay for that. Stationery. The whole transitional with ngā oho ake is to make that whole transitional as smooth and as painless as possible.
Yes.
And well, I've come across, and you know what? there's so many nannies that are taking care of their mokopuna. And for a number of reasons, you know, their daughter or their sons have bellied up on the pea trip, you know, all at journey. That's the main one. Most of the parents of on that journey, or suicidal.
Mm.
A lot of the parents have made, one of them have got made suicidal, so the extended fun has come into awhi. And this whole, a lot of disillusional and unhappy whānau out there. And in saying all that, they think kohanga is the nest for peace for them.
Yes.
Because one mum was crying on the phone with me and she said, if I didn't have kohanga, I don't know where I'll be. You know, things like that. So it's a, and yet you get a really strong percentage of whānau where they will move mountains for their babies. Absolutely. You know, and it's that age group too where, you know, they're absolutely so innocent, so loving and everything, all those fuzzies, and they would do anything for their children. And then you get, I've come across some professional whānau, and they are leaving their babies through to Kura. Once they get to finish Kura, they won't take their babies to Kura. They'll be going to private schools. So you have that strand, just a small percentage that are able to do that. And they've already planned it, you know, you can see that it's all planned. But unfortunately, there's quite a large percentage that have got, that are very much involved, not involved, but trapped, I'll call a word trap, in that whole social raru of surviving. And that's what I found, that's what I'm finding in South Auckland. But then you get some whānau that, oh man, they're hard case. I ring them and they say, I'll leave a message. So I text, and then they'll text me back and say, who are you? It's like, you know, they're checking me out. And then I just explain who I am, what I'm doing, and I'm, you know, part of the kohanga, blah, blah. And they said, then I even got, which kohanga are you from? What's your name? Blah, 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 blah. You know, and I said, if you like Rick Carey. Yeah, so, you know, I get, they become detectives too.
That's so good to hear.
Yeah. So, you know, they're, oh, it's a real mix. Well, we are a mixed bag, eh? We all are uniquely different. But, you know, I've said this to Huri too, Monica, you know, we can, and with Te Taumata, I know he has a lot of strands of institutions that awhi and help and support to do what's best for our people. But, you know, I don't know, I've been on this planet for 67 years. And, you know, these institutes don't really, in my eyes, help people at all to a certain extent. And that's why I said in the beginning of my kōrero, you know, it's what we're wanting to, and I don't like using the word create, because I think we're talking on a level of nature. You know, we're wanting to do what naturally comes to all peoples, to create enlightened people. And how do we do that? I agree to a certain degree, yes, if we can help in housing, health, hauora, blah, 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 that's fine. I haven't got a problem with that. But what is the source of everything? What is the source of every human being to become enlightened individual, I suppose. That's what that for me, even when you look at the kohanga reo maramataka, the last pikitia of the kohanga maramataka is the mokopuna is enlightened with the universe.
Mai tio te ao.
Aye. So that's what we should be looking at. What is the tool to create that individual, that mokopuna, an enlightened soul? Because I know, and you guys know too, I'm sure, we can do so much in the world we live in the material world, but it's not the answer. So I don't know what more I can say.
You know, I think that's absolutely lovely how you talk about. I agree too in terms of, you know, the our lives on the earth plane, if you like, is about looking after our soul and caring for it and nurturing it, developing it, so that, you know, the end of the day and every day is that we know what is right and what is wrong, what choices to make, good choices. We will you know, experience life in terms of what life can give us and benefit ourselves and our families. But if you were to talk to the generations about that, just, you know, honestly, just directly and being honest about what is your, you know, how well are you today? What are your goals for just today, for this week? The generations, some of the generations in the community now don't have a plan for today or tomorrow. You know, they don't have solid goals. Know that when they wake up, they know exactly what they're going to do for the rest of the week or for the rest of the month. But yeah, it's been interesting, I think, while you've been out there in the community listening to different stories. We're too hearing so many stories just by listening to our classmates in the, you know, the bigger group is well over 100 of us. I think there's close to 200. And you hear their stories around the country, and it's not just Māori. You hear stories from different communities, and we've all got common. There's so many familiar scenarios that are happening right now, so it would be difficult for some of our young ones to plan each day and for the week or the month.
It also, you know, it depends on what exposure they've been to as well, eh? You know, in their homes, in their classrooms, the you know, that whole social issue, their peers, you know, all that. I you know, reflecting back in time, I didn't really appreciate, you know, the years I had when I was a teenager amongst all those kaumātua, you know. I didn't appreciate it until until I became a parent, I think. And the value of that time I had with them. You know, it's our younger generation, you know, just going through the kohanga, being involved with puo for over 35 years. The younger generation think differently now. You know, in the first possibly 15, 20 years of puo, the whānau, you know, we had nearly 80 to 100% participation. But you can't just blame the whānau, of course. It's that whole social issue, that the change of most of our whānau, Glen Innes, Paemua, East Side, all on benefits in the 1990s. And at that time, they didn't have to worry about reporting back to the department and looking for training or looking for jobs. There was a period of about nearly 10 years where everyone that was on a benefit, I think it was called WINS then, where they just got their weekly income and that was it. And then after 10 years, you see the pattern. Because of caucus, because of policies, that's when everyone that was receiving the benefit had to be more answerable to the puti that they were receiving, i.e. policies came in and they said, okay, you have to start looking for training now. Or if you don't want to do that, you've got to start looking for a job. Otherwise, you start losing your benefit. So that's when the whole structure of when our whānau used to come to kohanga 5 days a week, you know, we had up to 40, 50 whānau with us nearly every day. But then when that whole policy changed within government for beneficiaries, that's when the numbers started dwindling. We started having whānau not coming because they had to fulfil certain criteria, receiving their income every week. Now in the last 6 years, we'll be lucky to get maybe 10 or 20 whānau at a whānau hui. And also just simple participation within kohanga. But, you know, there's positives within that though, and I you know, appreciate that because now our whānau are very well trained, you know, they're going to university. Now our whānau have got full-time jobs, you know. There are positives within that. But unfortunately, you know, for all of us, time is so precious. And the majority of our whānau, you know, always sending to us, when COVID was around, it was great because we had Zoom call, whānau calls. Now, so then we started, when it stopped, we continued on Zoom calls for a few months. Then whānau said, oh, they missed that kānui te kānohi. But we started that and we only had about 10 whānau hui last month. So, you know, it's juggling balls in the air. It's, we're going through it. I'll just share this with you. We're going through an ERO in 2 weeks' time, and we were going through this. You know, that about 40-something pages that thick. All these questions, some of them are absolutely ridiculous. You know, and in English, that you know our kaya core, I think, what's that about? You know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even relevant to how we think. So yeah, there's going to be a few questions. I just kept saying to Tanya and Annette, oh look, you know, don't get all tied up about what they're asking. You know the kaupapa, you just put them back on track.
That's right. Yeah, we've got such a beautiful kaupapa that sometimes when you get these new words come in front of you, presented, it does affect people in some ways. You know, our people in terminology, even ourselves, even myself. You know, but you're right. You know, the kaupapa sound. Sometimes we've got to convince our own kaimahi that the kaupapa is sound. That everything you do is authentic.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, that's all. I just, you know, I've just got to remind ourselves when they come in, you know, they ask 100 pātai and then you can answer that the way you want to. You don't even have to answer the question.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so, you know, and I'm using that example because that's, you know, that's basically ERO, Ministry of Education, and that's another way how, again, they disseminate, you know, who we are.
Yes.
And so, you know, that has huge influences with whānau decision as well.
Yes.
In terms of the future for their children. Yeah, so, yeah, I hope, you know, what I've shared, it does help you all.
Yes, that's awesome.
Most
I
definitely.
wanted to ask you though, what do you think that the induction process that we have in place and has been in place, mai rā anō, is possibly a key in terms of planning their future. The kohanga whakauru whānau hou in terms of introducing them to the philosophies of our kaupapa. Could that be something, a start anyway for their future?
If it was at all possible, if we knew the direction where they wanted to go, and because that'll give you some insight of, what they would be interested to listen to. Like we have a little boy at our kohanga, and he's a whiz. He's a whiz on his iPad, and he watches all these animation stuff, and he's quite talented with a pen and paper drawing all these animation characters, and he loves it. He's so talented, and he's only 4. And I said to his mum, I said, "Oh my gosh!" I said, "Have you thought about possibly steering him in that direction as a career?" And she said, "Yes, we have. His dad and I have thought about that." And I said, "Wow." And that's where you can start it. Once you know their aspirations or, vision, I would start there because when I do inductions now for kohanga, that's what I want to know, because you've got to move with the times. Hey, how we used to advertise or market kohanga way back. That's just, well, my daughters tell me, "Mum, that's old school." You've got to and I've started looking at alternatives like social media. Everyone's most of the people I know and all our whānau are on social media. And I was taking care of our Facebook page, but then my daughter again said to me, "Mum, it's not a pānui social media." Because that's what I was doing. I was doing pānuis on my Facebook page. So Huia said to me, "Mum, let me just show you." And then, and the way she did it was fun, colourful, creative, and more meaningful, because she had photos, videos, and then she'll put up a character with, ha, 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 all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the comments back from the whānau was it was a conversation, it was a happy conversation, and the parents loved it. So that's how we need to think to be able to bring in more whānau participation, more interest in the kaupapa. So I've learned, over the years, I've learned about social media a bit more and kind of appreciate what that skill takes as well.
Well, maybe
and
we
I
can
think,
find balance in that too.
yeah. Well, you look at TV on our Māori television, you look at the children's programs, it's all animation. It's relevant to what's happening in the world that the children, that our rangatahi are living in. It's about atua. It's about our tūpuna. But they use animation to attract that generation. And, relevant to, our history, our philosophies as well. But it's just changing